Shabbat Shalom. During this time of mourning and war in Israel, uncertainty about the fate of the hostages, and rise in anti-Semitism here in the United States, our instinct to fight or flight has been activated for 6 weeks now. That's a very long time to be in a heightened state of stress. And it would be easy for fight or flight to move into weariness and fatigue, and then for that fatigue to move into despair. But we cannot let that happen. We cannot let it reach despair. Instead, now is the time to strengthen and to shore up and to activate our hope. Generations before us have kept a uniquely Jewish, resilient, and relentless, even I would say, kind of hope. And we must do so today. We must continue that today. So first, I want to share a story about what it might mean for some of us to struggle to maintain that hope. And I'm going to share a story from someone in our community that's very painful and which I share today only totally anonymously because I continue to believe that we can learn a lot from our stories. We can learn a lot from each other. So I made up the name, Shimon this time. I can't remember what was the name I made up last time. Shimon has had a strong Jewish identity his whole life, been fortunate enough to have a Jewish education and to be in a shul and to have plenty of visits to family in Israel. But since the war began, he confided in me that something has shifted for him. He said, "Rabbi, I don't know if I want to be Jewish anymore. It has become too hard. It has become too hopeless." And even as he was saying these words, I could sense that he was ashamed to be saying them and was telling me the truth about how he felt. And I felt a lot of empathy for someone who's in so much pain around being Jewish. But I was not shocked and I was not offended. And I reassured him that in our relationship, and I'm going to say the same thing about my relationship with all of you, ask all the questions and doubt all the things. We can do that together, and I mean that. So you can ask all the questions, and you can also doubt all the things with me. Shimon is not alone in feeling hopeless sometimes, and even, like I said, teetering toward that path towards despair. He is not the only one of us who has doubted whether the incredible blessings of being Jewish are worth its undeniable burdens. And that's one of those things that maybe you're not supposed to say out loud. And I'm saying it out loud so that we remember the risk of what happens if we let ourselves lose our hope, if we let ourselves go from that hopelessness to despair direction. I want us to remember that this is not theoretical and that the risks are indeed real and high. During our most difficult times, and this is one of them, hope is the hardest emotional work. We cannot sit back and we cannot take for granted that we will, number one, that we will always have that hope ourselves, and two, that we will always have enough of it, or we will always have enough energy or vision to pass it on to the next generation. We cannot take that for granted. One of our stories, which we read this morning, in one of those stories, one of our matriarchs loses her hope. So we heard earlier today about the twin brothers, and I'm going to bring us a little back in time to before they were even conceived. That to remind us that Rebecca struggled with infertility and prayed to be able to have children. And then she was blessed with the ability to be able to have children. But it was a difficult pregnancy. And before they are even born, the twins fight in the womb. And it's painful. Imagine physically painful and maybe also spiritually painful, because she is aware that they're fighting with each other. And she cries out to God. Vatomer im ken lama ze anochi. If this is so, if this is how it's going to be, if this is going to be my life, why do I exist? Lama ze anochi. I prayed and prayed to have children, and then this is what I get? Her pain must have been so intense as to cause her to question her entire existence. Should I even exist? Maybe it was, did I make a mistake by praying so hard for a child? Did I make a mistake by asking to be a parent? But why do I exist is deeper than that. Why do I exist is hopeless. She questions her own role. She questions everything. And she asks herself, like our anonymous member of our community, Shimon, that I made up the name, like he asked himself, why is this who I am? Being Jewish is hard right now. The story of Rebecca losing her hope and fearing then that she's losing herself reminds us that, in her case, even when we get what we want, she wanted to get pregnant. Even when we get what we want, we can lose hope. All the more so we can lose hope when we're waiting and watching and praying, as we are now, day after day around Israel. We don't have what we want yet. So we're all the more in danger of losing our hope. Because hope is fragile and it needs tending to. The way that we survive moments in our history like this one is we must intentionally activate our hope. We have to work to do it. At every great turning point in Jewish history, our people have worked to activate that hope that we need to survive. There's so many examples, just a few. Our temple in Jerusalem was destroyed twice. We still pray at the Kotel, at the western wall of what was once the temple complex. And for thousands of years before we could pray at the Kotel, we kept alive our hope to return to Jerusalem. Who remembers what is the last line of the Passover Seder? One of you is going to know this. A lot of you are going to know this. That was a big mush, but I know the right answer was next year in Jerusalem. L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim. The last line of the Passover Seder. We said that for, like I said, for almost 2,000 years from when the temple was destroyed until we could actually be in Jerusalem and with the establishment of the modern state of Israel, and we still say it today. For generations and generations, even when our ancestors had no reasonable expectation that we would return to Jerusalem anytime soon, we kept saying, next year in Jerusalem. And we said it so much that all of you, without any Haggadah in front of you, all of you knew the line, or you sort of remembered the line, or the person next to you knew the line, and then you heard it. That is quite a lot of active, intentional hoping over quite a long period of time. Soon we will light Hanukkah candles. That too is a story of intentional hope. Our ancestors lit the candles even though they knew logically that they did not have enough oil to last very long, but they kept lighting anyway, and so must we, and so will we. Our tradition teaches that we cannot sit by passively and take hope for granted. We have to continue to do the hard work. So, lighting candles, Passover Seder, those are examples of actively taking control, taking ownership over our hopefulness. Jewish traditions that nurture hope. And I encourage you to find, those are the ones I thought of, find ones that work for you, and let's find them together. If you don't have one that works for you yet, let's find one together that helps you to develop a practice of active hopefulness, because we need it. We need it, and we need it as a whole, and each of us needs it individually. Maybe it's, for you, Hatikva. This is Israel's national anthem, which means hope, the hope. A particularly Jewish hope, a Jewish hope. In my recent Skolnik class, which was so much fun, I spoke with some of you who we just finished on Wednesday night. It was called Jewish Prayer in Changing Times. And we debated and then we decided that Hatikva is both a national anthem and a prayer. Wasn't obvious that it's a prayer, but we talked about what is a modern prayer, and we decided, at least according to our class and their authority, that Hatikva counts as a modern prayer. It is one sentence of active hope. The last two lines, I would even argue, is a kind of a double hope. It's a hope for our continuing hope. 2 layers. We sing, last line? You guys are doing so well. I feel like I should. Last line of Hatikva. Od lo avda tikvatenu. We have still not lost our hope. A hope that we will continue our hope. As many of you know, because I talk about him a lot and he's been on my mind even more these last weeks, my grandfather was a Holocaust survivor. And I have always sought to understand how could he have suffered in the way that he did, and how in the world did he not lose his hope. After he died, when we were cleaning out his house, I found a framed print. It's about this big. A framed print of Israel's Declaration of the Establishment of the State of Israel, sometimes called the Declaration of Independence of Israel. And it was hung up on his wall. And I never got to ask him what Israel's founding document meant to him. I wish I had. But I like to imagine that he looked up at it on the wall, framed beautifully, and he reached for some of the hope that he needed to sustain him for the rest of his life. And I thank those heroes of Israel's first generation, that founding generation, and in particular, as we're honoring the 50th yahrzeit of David Ben-Gurion, Israel's first prime minister, the first signature at the bottom. I thank them for giving my grandfather and for giving all of us a reason to sing and pray and say as many times as it takes so we don't ever give in to despair. Od lo avda tikvatenu, that we have still not lost our hope, And may we never, never lose our hope. Shabbat Shalom.